I welcome all the participants. I will now invite Ms. Fatma Alam to moderate this event.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first panel of PRC's virtual conference. I request you to mute your mics. In case a question or anything that arises, I request you all to put your concerns in the chat box so that we may proceed accordingly. But for the decorum, self on mute. This is a humble request. I may proceed now. Out of all the excellent research papers that the PRC received, our review board shortlisted 5 papers. 2 papers are going to be presented in this panel, and the remaining 3 papers are going to be presented in the parallel panel. I would like to begin by welcoming the 2 chairs of this panel.
I don't care. I'm not listening to you calculate.
Dr. Sara Rizvi.
Excuse me, if I could intervene for one second, could everybody please mute themselves? I would appreciate if you could all please mute yourself. Thank you so much. Please continue, Ms. Fatma.
I would like to begin by welcoming the 2 chairs for this panel. Our first panel chair is Dr. Sara Rizvi Jafri. She is Chairperson Associate Professor at the Department of Sociology, Forman Christian College.
You know what? If there's somebody who's a co-host, or if you make me a co-host, or if there's nobody else, I can keep muting people. That's what you would have to do. You have to keep muting them as they enter.
Yes, we're doing that, Dr. Sarah. We'll try and make all the panelists and the panel chairs the co-host. We're doing that right away. Thank you.
She did her BSc Honours from London School of Economics and Political Science, UK, and MPhil and PhD from the University of Punjab. Dr. Jafri's area of interest in the public health, minority study, and social policy development. She has received funding for projects related to microfinance, poverty elevation, intergenerational learning between the elderly and the youth, the digital health literacy access for women at primary healthcare level. She is currently pursuing an online postdoctorate fellowship from University of Oxford, UK, and planning to write her next book on social policy. Dr. Jafri is also working on a multifaceted nationwide project related to COVID-19 and its effect on maternal healthcare indicators. Our second host for the chair for the meeting is Dr. Khatija Shakrullah. She's the second panel chair. Dr. Khatija is an associate professor at the Department of Geography, Forman Christian College, University, Lahore. She joined FC College in 2009. She is currently pursuing her postdoctorate from University of Punjab, Lahore. Her research interest includes urban climate, landscape, ecology, and climate change. I would also like to welcome our speakers, Dr. Syed M. Asim and Dr. Iram Nasir Ahmed, our guests and other participants. Welcome, Dr. Sara and Dr. Khatija Shakrullah. I would now like to invite our first speaker, Dr. Syed Muhammad Asim. Dr. Syed Muhammad Asim Alamgir is an associate professor, Department of Statistics, University of Peshawar. He's one of the executive members of Population Research Center, established recently in the Department of Statistics, University of Peshawar. Dr. Asim Alamgir will present his research on topic, a comparative study of determinants of socioeconomic and demographic factors of child malnutrition in South Asian countries. Dr. Asim, now I would like to thank you for being here with us, and please kindly start your presentation.
Thank you very much, madam. Actually, this work has been done by one of our former students, who was MPhil student at that time. He is now a lecturer in a college in Peshawar, in Commerce College. He is already here with me, and he has joined online the panel. So I would like Mr. Mashal Khan, who has actually done this work on stunting, to present his research work. So if you could please allow him, he will present it.
And sir, you are the co-host, so the slides would have to be uploaded by your end. I think.
Yeah, please. He is going to upload the slides. His name is Mashal Khan.
Excellent. Welcome, Mashal Khan sir.
Thank you, sir.
Please, over to you, Mashal Khan, please.
Thank you very much, Sir Alamgir. Could you please allow me to share my screen?
You can do that now, Mashal Khan sir.
Okay, thank you. Now it's working. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is Mashal here, a member of Population Research Center, Statistics Department, University of Peshawar. We as a team, including Dr. Muhammad Iqbal, Dr. Syed Muhammad Asim, Dr. Alamgir, conducted a research on very important issue, health-related issue, and particularly in child population. Our title is a comparative study of the determinants of socioeconomic and demographic factors of the child malnutrition in South Asian countries. What we did in this paper, we just linked the determinants, I mean the socioeconomic and demographic factors, with one of the important issue that is called malnutrition. And we just investigated how it is impact the child malnutrition. Along with this, we also calculate the prevalence of overall South Asian countries in as well as in each South Asian countries. So I'm going to forward, and this is in the next slide. It is a brief introduction to the malnutrition. It is also called undernutrition. And undernutrition can be defined as when a child didn't get a proper nutrients in their early childhood age. And it can bring muscle loss, weakness, immune function, capacity for recovery, and many other important problems that we can say that should be investigated. So in this slide, why we are studying malnutrition, this is showing like the consequences of malnutrition, negative outcome associated with malnutrition, and it can be appear on the screen: delayed wound healing, impaired immunity, lower quality of life, impaired function, increased length of stay and readmission, and higher mortality and morbidity. So this is the issue that could just bring by a malnutrition in child population. Further, you can see in this chart, it can easily allow you the malnutrition can just keep up morbidity, wound healing will be reduced, infection will be increased, more complications. Alternatively, it can just bring higher morbidity, can bring mortality, more time to treat, more higher length of stay in hospital, and overall it could just increase the overall cost and decrease the quality of life, more suffering. So this is what is mean, like why we are studying the malnutrition. You can see it is a very big and very alarming indicator that should be focused on. So about our methodology, from here we got a data set. I know most of you will know about the DHS, Demographic Health Surveys. It is international surveys that are conducted usually in underdeveloped countries. And we just investigated and took a recently conducted demographic health surveys that include Pakistan Demographic Health Survey. You know about the PDHS 2017-18, Bangladesh Demographic Health Survey, Indian Demographic Health Surveys, Nepal, and Maldives. These are were selected South Asian countries. About how you can just measure the malnutrition, we have different indicators. Most widely used are wasted, stunted, and underweight. Wasted, I mean the weight for height. Stunting mean height for age. Underweight means weight for age. And you can see the first dummy of the child. This is showing a normal child. And the third one, you can see this is a stunted, a low height. And in the middle one, this is showing wasted and as well as underweight. I mean, this child didn't meet the right underweight, the required weight for what he or she should be required. So the three is most probably used: wasted, stunted, underweight. However, we just use the one of the three, that is stunted. We just investigated how a child will be malnourished or how a child will be undernourished if if his or her height is not met what the requirement according to the WHO, World Health Organization. So this is my concern indicator, stunted, and you can see there are 6 children. According to the WHO standard, 9 years old should 132 centimeter height, but all of them having less height. So these 6 child can be considered as stunted, alternatively malnourished, undernutrition, right? So this is what we our indicator. We just measure the malnutrition by a stunting, low height for age. So next, this is about our methodology. We use a Z-scores, and to just to know whether a child is stunted or malnourished or not. So a Z-score can be defined as individual height minus median value of the reference population divided by standard deviation of the referenced population. And just to let you know that we used WHO 2016 reference population for this study. And we just compared our child height, they are living in South Asian countries, with the reference population provided by WHO. And our cutoff point is if a Z-score is less than -2, indicate that a child is malnourished or stunted. So this is what we have our methodology, about our methodology. So about our results, we can see globally, let me just define again, a Z-score of less than -2, we have 36% children that were stunted, they were malnourished. And you can see we have a huge number of a sample size 253392. And along with this, a moderate malnutrition, a Z-score of -2 to -3, it is about 20.8%. And severe malnutrition, a severe number of stunted children of about 15.2%. These results are showing the comparison of both boys and girls. In overall, we can see that boys were more stunted, were more malnourished as compared to girls. Like you can see 36.5% boys, while 35.4% were girls. This is overall global malnutrition, that is less than -2. About the moderate, it is 20.7 versus 20.9. So a bit increase in boys as compared to girls. Okay, so this graph showing the comparison of our selected children with international reference data. The red curve in the middle showing the WHO reference curve, while the green showing what we have, what we selected the children. So you can see that the green line drags toward left side, showing that we have many children having a Z-score of less than -2. So this is how we can just compare the our children with the WHO standards. This is the comparison of different 5 South Asian countries of malnutrition, prevalence of malnutrition. We can see that higher number of children, that is 36.8%, found in India, followed by the second one, that is 36.1% Pakistan, and then 32.9% in Nepal, and then 27.7% in Bangladesh, and the least 14.5% in Maldives. So again, we can see that India, Pakistan is at top of the list in the malnutrition, the prevalence of malnutrition in South Asian countries. If we compare with the Maldives, it is more than 2 times. So this is very much alarming situation for Pakistan and as well as in India. Okay, next, this is again the same results presented through graph. So we can see that Pakistan is at second list, second position, 36.1%, and India is at the top, 36.8. Again, Nepal 32, Bangladesh 27.7, and the least is Maldives 14.5. This is the results that is same provided by in the previous slide. This slide showing like our main objective is to link the socio-economic demographic factors with this serious public health issue related to child population malnutrition. We just use the logistic regression to determine the socio-economic demographic factors. We have different factors like child age, birth order, wealth, parent education, toilet facilities, family size, etc. So all of the factors just converted into qualitative nature, just to confirm and just to have a reference population, reference category in there. So we can see at the first, if you just look at the child age in months, we took 0 to 12 as a reference, and we can clearly see that above 36 children, 2.8, about 2.8 times more at risk to be stunted as compared to the younger child. So, and the P is greater than Z, it is showing a P value. I know most of you will be just familiar with this P value. It means this 2.84 is significantly more as compared to a problem arising in a younger child, 0 to 12 months. If we move to the birth order, we took the 1 to 3 place as a reference, and if you see a child born at 4 to 6 place, it is 1.07 times more at risk to be stunted, to be malnourished, as compared to a child born at 1 to 3 place. If we see greater than 6, again it is 1.07 times more at risk, and 4 to 6 is significantly more likely. So again, birth order, and I would say birth order and child age playing a very important role in a child malnutrition. Next, if we just look at the wealth index, we took richest children as a reference, and it is clearly showed that poorest children are more likely, I mean 2.1 times more likely to be malnourished or stunted as compared to the richest. And if we see that age wealth index, if a child have born in a poorest, middleist, a richer and richest, it just improving. So it means the wealth index also playing a very important role in a child malnutrition issue. And next, child size, size of child at birth, we just took very large as reference, and we can see that a child having small age, a very small weight, height at birth, it is 1.66 times more likely to be stunted or malnourished as compared to a child a very large size at birth. So again, this is very much important factors for child malnutrition, that is size of child at birth. Again, if you just compare urban rural, and it is showing that rural children are approximately 1.07 times more likely to be stunted, and it is significant. Again, a p value of 0.018. So again, area playing important role. Mother education, so we took higher education as a reference, a mother having higher education as a reference. So you can see a child with no uneducated mother are 1.72 times more likely to be stunted. So it is again significant. So mother education is a same information given by father education as well. That is, again, if a father have no education, their children will be more likely stunted or malnourished as compared to a father having higher education. We have again a father occupation. So a risk factor in this overall agriculture employed, or we can see a father working in the agricultural field, their child or more at risk as compared to a father having occupation professional as a reference. So we took a professional as a reference here. So again, father occupation also playing important role. Mother occupation, we can see agriculture self-employed were more, we can see our ratio of less than, so agriculture self-employed are less likely to be stunted, a mother having this occupation. Toilet facility is again an important factor. No toilet facility, we took no toilet facility as a reference. So flush, pit latrine, those children having access to flush, pit latrine were less likely to be stunted as compared to those children having no facility. So toilet facilities again is important factor for child malnutrition. Interestingly, we've seen water source. So we took filter water as a reference, and we can see that pipe water, tube well, dug well, these sources is more risky for malnutrition because of higher earth ratio of 1.09 time, 1.15 time, 1.08 time, but these were not significant factors. At last, we have cooking fuel as a factor. We took natural gas as a reference. And if we just seen that the most risk category for this factor is wood, straw, shrubs, grass, and agriculture, animal dung. I mean animal dung. So those children who used wood cooking as a cooking fuel, straw, shrubs, grass, animal dung, those were more likely to be malnourished as compared to those children who used natural gas as a cooking fuel. So again, animal dung, agriculture, straw, shrubs, grass, wood, these were more risk factors. You can say more risk factors or categories. At the end, we have gender. We took female as a reference, and we can see that that is male children or male babies were 1.05 more likely to be stunted as compared to female. So, and we can see the p value of 0.0000, highly significant. This is the summary of the previous 3 slides. We have these, we found these socioeconomic and demographic factor as a risk. That is male baby more at risk to be malnourished. Rural area, like children living in rural area were more likely to be malnourished as compared to children living in urban area. Low wealth index, low mother education, low father education, older child age, because as a parents we taking more care to the child at initial ages because of breastfeeding or other things, but as they growing up, the malnutrition coming more on those ages. Higher birth order, we can see we taking more care for those babies who born at 1 to 3 places. If it is born at more than 6 stage, more than 6 order, so the malnutrition again occur in that order more likely. Father and mother working in the agriculture, again this is my risk factor. Small size at birth, no toilet facility, and cooking fuel, these were the more risk factors and founded significant factors of the child malnutrition. So this is my summary. Again, we have overall of stunting, the prevalence of stunting in South Asian countries were about 36%. And according to my knowledge, it is consistently increased from 15%. So it is not up at higher level 36%. We should care about it, and we should just decrease this ratio, because 36% is higher number. And again, if you just compare the different countries, the prevalence of stunting is found higher in India, followed by Pakistan 36.1, Nepal 32.9, Bangladesh with 27.7, and Maldives with 14.5. These were my answers to the objective number 1, the prevalence of stunting, I mean malnutrition of overall, and as well as in each South Asian selected countries. And again, the same information, these were my significant socio-economic demographic risk factors of child nutrition were male baby, rural area, wealth index, low father, and other things. We already discussed this. Okay, so moving forward, these based on the findings, I have these recommendations, like we should launch short-term, long-term programs, right? To just to get aware the people, the parents about the child malnutrition. Special attention needs to be paid to reduce low birth weight. So how we can reduce low birth weight during pregnancy? Maternal food supplementation along with iron, treatment of malaria, the most effective intervention to increase birth weight. Investment on education, particularly women education, is very crucial. There are a need to pay more attention to older child age, as these children are most vulnerable to malnutrition. Child with high birth order, I mean above 6, need more attention, right? And the last effort should be made to provide clean water to every household. Similarly, proper toilet facility needs to provide to children, and these possible recommendations could decrease the child malnutrition in South Asia as well as each country. And we can see it can reduce the cost, it can reduce the morbidity, mortality, can increase the wages, and many other important factors. So thank you very much for the listening, and if anybody have a question, I can answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Marshall. Can you please stop sharing your screen?
Yeah, sure.
I thank you and Dr. Alamgir for this wonderful presentation. I would like to invite the audience to ask questions, if any. In that case, please raise your hands or drop down your questions in the chat box.
I had a question to Mr. Mishal. Mr. Mishal, did you at all look at the interaction effect of these variables? Because some of them seem or theoretically would be related. So did you at all look into the interaction effect between variables?
No, we just investigated only the main effects because we were using the logistic regression, so there were no issue about the multicollinearity or other things. So we just investigated the main effects. But yes, you gave a very good idea. We can investigate in the future just to relate mother education with other, and we can just make different interaction factor include in the same model. Thank you.
Thank you.
I once again remind anybody, if they are wanting to ask more questions, we are welcoming them till we move forward with the next speaker. In that case, I will now say that the question answer session is being concluded as we move on to the second speaker. Our second speaker for today is Dr. Iram Nasir Ahmed. Dr. Iram is an assistant professor at Forman Christian College University in the Department of History and Pakistan Studies. She has attended School of Arizona State University when she went there on a visiting fellowship and completed her PhD from the University of Punjab. The topic of Dr. Iram's presentation is environmental challenges and green economy, a case study of South Asia. Dr. Iram, I kindly request you to proceed with your presentation. Ma'am, you're on mute. I would request you to unmute yourself.
Yeah, can you hear me? Hello,
Yes, ma'am.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So I would like to first of all thank all of you, PRC, particularly Dr. Sara and all the entire team who provided me chance to share research. So can you allow me to share my screen over here? So yeah. Yes. So the topic of my today's presentation is environmental challenges and green economy, a case study of South Asia. So first of all, I would like to share that what motivated me to share this research with all of you, because recently I have worked human insecurity in South Asia, but prior to that, no one worked on at the ecological and environmental challenges in South Asia that really ignited me to work and fill this gap. So my presentation will be based on 6 sections. First of all, I would discuss about the purpose of the study and then the significance of green economy and why I chose the inclusive green economy for South Asia, and then core ecological problems of South Asian studies and alternative choices to adopt renewable energy sources. And in the end of my presentation, I would like to share the challenges, recommendations, and key findings. So let me begin with the objective of my study. So South Asia is the highest inhabited parts of this world. So I don't know what.
Ma'am, if you could please press F5, that will make it full screen.
Sorry?
F5, madam. If you could please press F5, it will be full screen, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm not identifying why it's not getting the full screen. So it's fine. I would discuss from here. So I'm just sharing the screen. So yeah. So South Asia is the highest inhabited parts of the world, containing approximately a quarter of the world's entire demography. Attaining coherent, inspiring economic progress over the last numerous years and taking gigantic perspective for regional growth and richness should be the ultimate objective. But unfortunately, the region is noticeable by stern political, financial, communal and traditional disparities. So moving forward, I would say that although the previous literature has debated a lot on state-centric security approach, but a few has been written on ecological challenges in South Asia, that how this menace has been swallowing the peace of this region. Because in global politics, the danger to a state has no longer remained from the opponent's military muscle, but now it has more concern on the domestic issues and ecological conditions, particularly in developing states. Therefore, I felt the need to work on it so that I can contribute a new idea in existing literature. So now I would like to share the primary source material that I have used in this article. So I have used the Asian Development Bank, World Health Organization, McKinsey Global Institute reports, World Bank annual reports, Goldman Sachs paper, United Nations Environment Program, and the Center for Climate and Energy Solutions, Global Forest Watch, and the endangered species. So first of all, it is important to understand that what is green economy. So it's still creating the problem. Yeah, so the green economy is one that results in increased human well-being and social equity, while significantly reducing environmental risk and ecological scarcities. It is an economy that results in reducing environmental risk and ecological scarcities and that aims for sustainable development without degrading our environment. So it is important to understand what are the basic characteristics of green economy. So the green economy mostly focuses on low carbon growth, resource efficiency, and it believes on sustainable development. So yeah, the more characteristics of green economy and why it is important for South Asian countries to adopt such measure. So first of all, the well-being. A green economy must create genuine, sustained, shared well-being, going beyond mere monetary wealth to prioritize human development, health, happiness, education, and community. And then justice. A green economy emphasizes equity, equality, community cohesion, social justice, and supporting human rights, especially the rights of marginalized minorities. It seeks a just transition and serves the interest of all citizens, including those yet to be born. Planetary boundaries. A green economy recognizes that all human flourishing depends upon a healthy natural world. It defends nature's functions and limits and protects biodiversity, soil, water, air, and other ecosystem capitals. Efficiency and sufficiency. A green economy is low carbon, diverse, and circular. It recognizes that our single biggest economic challenge is the need to create prosperity within planetary boundaries and align economic incentives and true cost to safety. Good governance. It believes on good governance. A green economy builds institutions that combine dynamic democratic accountability, relevant metrics, sound science, and local knowledge. Civil life priorities, public participation, social dialogue, informed consent, transparency, and accountability is the basic characteristics of green economy. But here in this paper, I have also emphasized on the inclusive green economy because it is the most relevant for the developing state to build a structure that believe on the cohesive progress. So it is important to understand what is inclusive green economy and why I have applied this in the South Asian case. In United Nations Environmental launched the Green Economy Initiative in 2008, which consisted of global research and country-level assistance, encouraging policymakers to support environmental investment within the context of sustainable development. So the green economy in the context of sustainable development and poverty eradication was placed on the 2012 Rio agenda and was acknowledged as a tool for achieving sustainable development. So the moving forward, it is focused on expanding options and choices for national economies using targeted and appropriate fiscal and social protection policies and backed up strong institutions that are specifically geared to safeguarding social and ecological flows. And it recognizes that there are many and diverse pathways to environmental sustainability. So after opting these two theoretical framework, now I would like to share the problems in South Asian states. So what are the ecological issues in South Asian states? So let me begin with the Bangladesh. So what are the problems of Bangladesh? First of all, the loss of biodiversity, limited access to potable water, waterborne diseases, especially of fishing areas, urban air pollution, soil degradation and deforestation is the major causes of environmental issues in Bangladesh. And what are the key causes? High population density and urban primacy, deficits in urban infrastructure, green revolution, and over-exploitation and pollution of groundwork. So now let me share the story of Bhutan. That what is the issue in Bhutan? That soil erosion is a major problem, limited access to potable water, and again high rate of urbanization. And India, as you know, all physically is the major state in South Asia. So what are the issues in India? Deforestation, soil erosion, overgrazing, loss of biodiversity, air pollution, water pollution, natural disasters such as floods, cyclones, and landslides are common there. High rate of urbanization and deficits in urban infrastructure, industrial effluents and vehicle emissions, increase in unmanaged marine and based tourism, green revolution are the major issues for Indian states. So, yes. Now, what are the problems, ecological problems of Maldives? So, even in Maldives, climate change, beach erosion, degradation of marine habitat is very unusual. High population densities increase in marine-based tourism. And again, in what is the story of Nepal? Even in Nepal, deforestation, soil erosion, and degradation, loss of biodiversity, water pollution, natural disasters such as floods and landslides in rural areas. Again, high rates of urbanization and increased population density is another major issue. So talking about our own country, Pakistan, so what are the environmental challenges that we are facing today? Are the water pollution, seasonal limitations on the availability of natural freshwater resources, majority of the population lacks access to potable water, and again deforestation, soil erosion, coastal habitat loss and degradation of marine environment is another big challenge. High rate of urbanization and deficits in urban infrastructure, industrial waste, population increase in coastal areas and rise in tourism is another problem. And what is the story of Sri Lanka? So let me explain here again this deforestation, soil erosion, loss of biodiversity, coastal degradation, and limited access to potable water. Waterborne disease is prevalent even in Sri Lanka. So I have discussed it state by state in this about this issue. Now let me explain what are the common factors or common problems facing by the South Asian states. So land degradation, water scarcity, deforestation and biodiversity loss, impacts to the marine environment and atmospheric pollution and natural hazards are the major issues in South Asian countries. Again, flooding and drainage issues, canal and lake water quality issues, traffic congestion issue, poor public convenience, threat to important ecosystem. So, keeping in view all these problems, I have identified what is the
Madam, you're muted. Could you please unmute yourself?
Sure.
Dr. Iram, we cannot hear you. You might want to check your audio equipment again. Dr. Iram, we are unable to hear you. Could you please check your audio equipment again? We can't hear you, ma'am. We can hear you now. Thank you.
yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. So it is important to understand what is renewable energy. Renewable energy, often referred to as a clean energy, comes from natural resources or processes that are constantly replenished. For example, sunlight or wind keeps shining and blowing, even if their availability depends on time and weather. So for me, I understand that the renewable energy is alternative model for all the South Asian countries because it focuses on solar energy, wind energy, biomass energy, hydroelectric energy, and geothermal energy. So if all the South Asian countries believe and focus on such kind of energy, so then they can avoid, all the states can avoid from the, can meet the environmental challenges. So let me explain the story of why renewable energy sources work in South Asian countries. So the solar energy, humans have been harnessing solar energy for thousands of years to grow crops, stay warm, and dry food. Solar farm can generate power for thousands of homes. Using mirror to concentrate sunlight across acres of solar cells, solar energy system do not produce any pollution or greenhouse gases. So again, the wind energy, we have come a long way from old-fashioned windmills. Today, turbines as tall as skyscrapers with turbines nearly as wide in diameter stand at attention around the world. Wind energy turns a turbine's blade, which feeds an electric generator and produces electricity. Wind, which accounts for a little more than 6% of US generation, has become the cheapest energy source in many parts of the country. Top wind power states include California, Texas, and Oklahoma. So again, the hydroelectric power is can be usable for all the South Asian states. So what is hydroelectric power? It is the big largeable renewable energy sources for electricity in the United States. Though wind energy is soon expected to take over the lead, hydropower relies on water, typically fast-moving water in a large river or rapidly descending water from a high point, and converts the force of that water into electricity by spinning a generator turbine's blades. So again, what are other source of renewable energy is the biomass energy. It is organic material that comes from plants and animals and includes crops, waste wood and trees. When biomass is burned, the chemical energy is released as heat and can generate electricity with a steam turbine. Still, some forms of biomass energy could serve as a low carbon option under the right circumstances. So the last one is the geothermal energy. So drilling deep wells brings very hot underground water to the surface as a hydrothermal resource, which is then pumped through a turbine to create electricity. Geothermal plants typically have low emissions if they pump the steam and water they use back into the reservoir. There are ways to create geothermal plants where they are not underground. There are not any other underground reservoirs. So now it's very important to understand that what are the ecological challenges and why it is producing the global warming. What are the risks that South Asian countries has to face if we fail to control the ecological challenges. First of all, changing rain pattern, changes in animal migration, less snow and ice would be the answer. Stronger storms, high temperature and more heat waves, more droughts and wildfires would be the result. It would damage the corals and the sea level would be rise and the ocean would get warmer, and then it would be dangerous to control our environment. So here I would like to share that where South Asian countries are exceeding and where they should not exceed. So water, health, energy, food, housing, gender inequality, peace and justice, education, income and work. So we are not all the South Asian countries are not working on these problems, but the result is we are producing climate change, ocean acidification, chemical production, nitrogen, freshwater withdrawals, land conversion, loss of biodiversity, air pollution, and ultraviolet rays that would result the ozone layer depletion, and it would be very dangerous for all the South Asian, not only I would say the South Asian countries, but also for the globe. So at the end, I would like to share the key findings, that what are the key findings of my paper that what I have identified, that how all the South Asian countries can control the environmental challenges. So the paper has identified that inclusive green economy model in South Asia can provide safety to a huge and mounting population. It offers engagement and business to a mainstream of the local workforce. A normal household in the country still passes more than half of its spending on nourishment. Even if this sector's environment to domestic GDP in the region is increasingly deteriorating. It trusts dominant to growth preparation and it ties and alteration to a green economy has to bounce the agriculture segment a significance of deliberation. So urbanization tendencies in South Asia present significant spaces for invigorating shift to green economy. Green economy would foster cross-community collaboration on distribution of ability, automation, competitiveness and capabilities. It could leverage business and national leadership for sustainable growth in South Asia. So overall, South Asian states should encourage modern tourism action to strengthen green economy. It would cut down carbon emissions, debris and other forms of pollution from South Asian countries. And moreover, I have identified that micro, small and medium enterprises should take initiative to reduce trust gap among all the stakeholders to build a sustainable future for all the South Asian countries. Capacity enhancement of micro business industries that cater to climate sensitive zones such as cultivation is again remarkable to strengthen flexibility in the South Asian region. The research has analyzed that pioneers in ecological economies have acknowledged that addressing discrimination in the South Asian countries involve on original attitudes than standard economies. It urges on relying on monetary supplies to incorporate conditions like human capacity building, particularly in the South Asian countries. So at the end, I would like to share this graph so you can see that how the North America have only 5% population in this world and the South America only 9% and Europe is only 10% population and Africa 17%, but South Asian we have 25% population in this part of the world. So how disaster it can be if we would not opt the renewable energy sources in this region. So I would like to finish here. So if you have any question, I would answer. I would like to answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Iram, for presenting a informative and relevant research paper. I would now like to invite the audience to ask questions. If any, please raise your hand and you may drop your questions in the chat box.
So I don't know what happened here in the screen sharing. So sorry for that inconvenience. Yeah.
That's all right, ma'am. Could you please deactivate the screen sharing now?
Okay, perfect. I think it's not deactivating. I don't know why. Yeah, there we go. No, it's fine. Yes.
Right. So now I would like to have the honor to invite our panel chairs, Dr. Sara Rizvi Jafri and Dr. Khatija Shakrullah, to render the concluding remarks. I would like to begin by requesting Dr. Sara Rizvi Jafri to share her comments on the papers that were presented in this panel. Over to you, Dr. Sara. Dr. Sara, you're not audible.
Can you
Your
hear?
voice is coming through, Dr. Sarah, but it's very weak.
Yeah, I'm trying to mute Dr. Iram. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, that's better. I think there was disturbance on one end. So those were both very valuable papers. Just some comments. I mean, I'll start with the paper that came under sociology. Is the person here, Mashal Saab? Mr. Mashal? Okay, well, hopefully he can hear us. Otherwise, maybe we can share this information with him. You know, ultimately, it's better always to use the word stunting because malnutrition is an umbrella term that includes stunting, undernutrition, and wasting. So I think this paper and this Z-score calculation that they used was also only related to stunting. So if they're going to prepare the study, all this effort for publication, it might be better to use that term. We have to be careful also about, some this was like a compounded data. So one other issues was that, you've used a DHS data from 2005, whereas there were 2 other recent DHS data that could have been used. So when we use these compounded statistics for all the South Asian countries, and then we have just one all-encompassing policy recommendation, again, we have to be careful. But of course, we need much more research in this area, and it was very valuable. So thank you. Dr. Iram, I think yours was a literature review. So I'm not going to comment. I think Dr. Khatija will share more information just to help you improve the value and quality. And again, when we're covering green economy, we try to compartmentalize information. You've covered so much, and so, and because it was a literature review, the emphasis was on recommendations. And I think you covered that well, but there was a lot of information. So possibly when you're again preparing it for publication, you might want to separate the information related to housing and living conditions versus management of the urban city, and water conservation, and then using solar energy. Those are all very different things. And when you're presenting them, we have to be careful that the overlap doesn't occur. But we have very little research from Pakistan under environmental sociology and all these areas, and environmental geography. So thank you for that. I'm just going to mute myself.
Thank you, Dr. Sarah. Dr. Khatija, would you please share your comments on the papers that were shared?
Thank you so much, and thank you, Dr. Iram. It was a good paper, but I would like to add few things. First of all, the topic is very broad, like environmental challenges and green economy. It's a very broad concept, topic and title as well. Secondly, you selected the region that is the South Asia, and South Asia is a very vulnerable for the different sort of disasters. If you take the population, I second you. The population is 25% contributing in the world population. The role of South Asia is very high. So you can say that South Asia is basically, there are a lot of environmental challenges, there are a lot of ecosystem services, there are a lot of environmental issues, they need to be addressed. But I would suggest you, if you want to do something more better in this field, so you need to narrow down your topic. And secondly, you covered a lot of things, renewable energy sources, and biodiversity, lot of things are there. So better is this, pick only one topic and like that, and you can change like climate change sort of thing, the sustainable development. You was talking about the SDG, the sustainable development. This is very, very important. And unfortunately in South Asia, we don't have a single example of sustainable city. We don't have any planned city in Pakistan, only one housing society in Karachi. I don't know right now where the society is going on, but the initial paperwork was basically on the sustainable development. So sustainability is the only key solution to resolve all the issues. Long list of the issues, ecological issues, environmental issues you address in your paper, in your presentation. So the best possible solution of all these issues are basically, these are basically all anthropogenic activities. And you know, anthropogenic activities, the role of man is very, very well known in the anthropogenic activity. Whatever we are doing in sense of climate change, we are doing being a human being. So the only solution of your this issue, like ecological issues or ecosystem services, we need to better the ecosystem services. And how? Through awareness, social media, or maybe nature-based solutions. So it's something else. It's a long debate. If I'll start talking about the nature-based solutions, what sort of the solution we can opt to minimize such sort of risk, disasters, because we discuss a lot of things: biodiversity, oceans, population, green economy, environmental issues like that. So I second Dr. Sara. It's basically literature review sort of paper, rather than the based on some like conclusion, as you just identify these are the issues. For second thing, I want to make it correct, and kindly in your second slide you mentioned primary data collection. Heading was primary data collection, but under the heading all the data sources were basically the published sources. They are basically classified under the the secondary data collection sources. So make it correct if it's a transcribing error, or if it's not transcribing error, then what are the primary data collection sources and how you collected the data on these environmental issues. So that's all from my side. So it's a good topic, but need to narrow down. Green economy is a very good, like green growth is very common, green spaces is very common in context of the climate change, like that in South Asia. But better is this focus only one region and only one perspective, rather than the overall ecological issues or ecosystem issues or services like that. That's all from my side, and thank you so much. It was a privilege for me. And thank you so much.
This concludes the proceeding for this panel. I would like to thank Dr. Muhammad Asim Alamgir, Dr. Iram Nasir Ahmed for their wonderful presentations and sharing their research papers with us. I would like to thank Dr. Sara Rizvi Jafri and Dr. Fatida Shakrullah for taking their time out of their busy schedules and chairing this panel. I would like to thank our partners, Population Council Pakistan, United Nations Population Fund, Higher Education Commission of Pakistan, and the Office of Research, Innovation, Commercialization at FCCU for their invaluable help in organizing this event. I would like to thank the PRC organizing team and the PRC advisory board for organizing this event. And most of all, I would like to thank our guests for the enthusiastic participation in this event. The papers presented today will be published in the form of booklet, which will be made available to all participants on request. With this final note, I now conclude this session. Thank you so much.
बस सबूत है ना हमारे पास बकायदा